Story 1. A Night at the Museum of Horror. In the heart of a city shrouded in nocturnal silence, the Museum of Horror stood as a monolith to the macabre. Its Gothic architecture, with spires clawing at the starless sky, promised a realm where the line between reality and nightmare blurred. This was where Mark Thompson, a young security guard with a deep intrigue for the unsettling, embarked on his inaugural night shift. The museum, an edifice of creaking corridors and dust-laden relics, was a trove of horrors. Among its exhibits were a mirror believed to imprison a vengeful spirit, a porcelain doll whose gaze harbored a sinister intelligence, and an ancient tome whose pages murmured forbidden secrets. As midnight struck, a transformation began. The museum, already a vessel of eerie stillness, seemed to breathe with a life unseen. Mark, navigating the labyrinthine halls, felt the weight of unseen gazes, as if the portraits adorning the walls bore witness to his solitary vigil. The first occurrence was subtle, a shadow flickering at the edge of his vision, a soft whisper behind a sealed door, a sensation of being followed. Rationalizing these as figments of his imagination, Mark pressed on, his flashlight piercing the oppressive darkness. Then came the mirror. Passing by, Mark caught a glimpse of a figure looming behind him. Spinning around, he found nothing but the silent hall. A chill ran down his spine as he faced the mirror again, meeting the hollow-eyed gaze of the figure still reflected within. The museum's artifacts were awakening. The doll, previously seated, now stood at the edge of its glass prison, eyes following Mark's every move. The ancient tome lay open, its pages fluttering as though caressed by an unseen hand, whispering in a tongue that twisted the air with malice. As the night deepened, the museum's atmosphere grew more oppressive. Paintings morphed into grotesque scenes, statues contorted into sinister poses. The line between the animate and inanimate blurred, as if the museum itself pulsed with a dark heart. The exhibits began to enact their grim histories. The mirror displayed past tragedies, the doll roamed the corridors with a gleaming blade, and spectral figures, summoned by the book, wandered like lost souls. Mark, his initial fascination now turned to horror, navigated this nightmare. He evaded the phantoms and the doll's malevolent pursuit, his every step a dance with death. The museum had become a stage for the macabre, each exhibit a testament to humanity's dark obsessions. In these hours of terror, Mark's understanding of fear evolved. He witnessed the seductive dance of horror and sanity, the thin veil between them frayed by the night's revelations. His fascination with the macabre, once a distant intrigue, was now a tangible terror, stalking him through the shadowed galleries. As dawn approached, the hauntings subsided. The artifacts returned to lifeless forms. The oppressive air lifted, leaving Mark in a world that had regained its mundane facade. He emerged from the museum at sunrise, his perception of reality irrevocably altered. But the story did not end there. Mark, compelled by a mixture of fear and an unyielding need to understand, returned night after night. Each shift unraveled new layers of the museum's dark tapestry. He discovered hidden rooms, each housing relics with their own dreadful tales. A music box that, when wound, played a melody that echoed the cries of the long-departed. A set of antique surgical tools that seemed to twitch with a yearning for flesh. A painting of a weeping woman whose tears seemed to moisten the canvas. Each artifact drew Mark deeper into their histories, revealing tragedies and horrors from centuries past. He witnessed scenes of ancient rituals, spectral revenges, and unspeakable acts, each leaving an imprint on his psyche. The museum began to change Mark. Nights turned into weeks, and the boundaries of his reality started to fray. He found himself conversing with the spectral figures, learning their stories, their regrets, their endless agonies. He sympathized with them, understanding their need to be remembered, to exist beyond their cursed immortality. Mark's own fears and anxieties began to intertwine with those of the museum's inhabitants. He experienced their phobias, their moments of terror. The museum became a realm where the past and present coexisted, where the dead whispered secrets into the ears of the living. On what would be his final night, Mark faced the mirror once more. This time, he did not flinch at the figure behind him. He understood now that the museum was not just a collection of artifacts, but a conduit for the human experience of horror. It was a reflection of the fears that dwell in the depths of the human psyche, fears that are timeless, universal. As the first light of dawn crept into the museum, Mark looked at his reflection, seeing not just himself, but the multitude of...
Story 2. The shadow at the end of the corridor. In the sleepy hamlet of Willow's End, nestled between the gnarled arms of ancient oaks, stood the Hawthorne House, a relic of a bygone era. Its Victorian architecture loomed like a brooding specter over the quaint neighborhood. The Eddington family, oblivious to the whispers and sidelong glances of the locals, moved into the house, eager to start anew. The house, with its creaking floorboards and drafty hallways, had an air of melancholy. At night, the wind howled through the eaves, carrying with it the faintest echoes of laments long forgotten. The Eddingtons, particularly young Thomas, were quick to dismiss these as quirks of an old house. It was on the third night that Thomas first saw it, the shadow at the end of the corridor, a shapeless, inky blot that seemed to pulsate with a life of its own. Initially, he convinced himself it was a trick of the light, a figment of his overactive imagination, but night after night the shadow returned, growing more distinct, more menacing. The shadow's presence began to permeate their lives. Objects were found misplaced, doors would slam shut with no discernible cause, and the air grew thick with a sense of foreboding. Thomas's parents, Helen and Robert, tried to rationalize these occurrences, attributing them to the house settling or the overactive minds of their children. Yet, Thomas couldn't shake off the feeling of being watched. The shadow seemed to follow him, appearing in reflections, lurking in the corners of his vision. It was during these sleepless nights that he began to hear whispers, voices that were drowned out by the daylight but grew bolder as darkness fell. As the days passed, the family's initial joy turned to unease. Helen, usually the epitome of pragmatism, confessed to feeling a chill whenever she walked past the corridor at night. Robert, too, grew irritable, plagued by nightmares he refused to discuss. Their youngest, Lily, spoke of a lady in the wall, a spectral figure that beckoned to her in hushed tones. Her innocent acceptance of the paranormal chilled her parents to the bone. The turning point came when Thomas, driven by a mix of fear and curiosity, decided to confront the shadow. One night, armed with nothing but a flashlight, he stood at the end of the corridor. The air grew colder, the oppressive silence punctuated only by his ragged breaths. As he shone the light towards the shadow, it seemed to recoil, then surge forward, engulfing the light and plunging Thomas into darkness. He awoke to find himself in his bed, with no recollection of how he got there. The experience, however, had left a mark. He became withdrawn, his eyes always darting to the shadows. Determined to uncover the truth, Helen began researching the house's history. She uncovered tales of a previous occupant, a widow shrouded in tragedy and rumored to have dabbled in the occult. It was said her spirit still roamed the halls, restless and vengeful. Armed with this knowledge, the Eddingtons sought the help of a local medium. During a séance, the medium channeled the spirit of the widow, revealing a tale of loss and betrayal. The widow had lost her child, and in her grief, turned to dark rituals to bring him back, only to be consumed by the shadows she summoned. The medium implored the spirit to find peace, to let go of the world of the living. As she spoke these words, a gust of wind swept through the house, extinguishing the candles, and with it, the shadow vanished. In the days that followed, the house felt lighter, as if a heavy shroud had been lifted. The Eddingtons, though shaken, decided to stay, embracing the house's history as part of their own. But some deems in the deed of night, Thomas would wake up to a faint whisper, a chill breezy, and he would wonder if the shadow at the end of the corridor was truly gone, or merely biding its time.
Story 3.
Whispers in the telephone tube. In the quaint town of Elderwood, where mist often cloaked the streets like a secretive shroud, Martin Colby led a life of mundane predictability. His days were spent working at the local bank, and his nights, in the solitude of his inherited Victorian mansion, resonated with the echoes of old memories and the creaks of aged wood. The mansion, with its towering gables and ivy-clad walls, stood as a silent witness to generations of the Colby family. But one autumn evening, as the leaves began their fiery transformation, Martin's uneventful existence was interrupted by a series of mysterious phone calls. Each call came precisely at 9:03 p.m., a time when the world outside seemed to pause, the wind holding its breath and the trees standing still in anticipation. The first call was an unsettling whisper, a voice so faint yet so clear, speaking his name, Martin. It was a voice devoid of warmth, like a winter breeze slipping through the cracks of the old mansion. The second night, the voice grew bolder, whispering predictions, small, seemingly insignificant details about the next day that always came true. A broken pen at work, a delayed train, a surprise visit from an old friend. Initially, Martin attributed these calls to a prankster with too much time on their hands. But as the days passed, the voice's predictions grew more personal and precise, foretelling events that no stranger could possibly know. It was as if the voice was watching him, weaving the threads of his life with an invisible hand. One chilling evening, the voice whispered something that turned Martin's blood cold. "Tomorrow you will encounter death." That night, sleep eluded him, each tick of the grandfather clock a reminder of the impending prophecy. The next day, Martin moved cautiously, hyper-aware of every shadow and sound. The day passed without incident until his walk home. As he approached his mansion, a figure stumbled out from the shadows, Mr. Harrow, his elderly neighbor, clutching his chest. Martin, with no knowledge of first aid, felt helpless as Mr. Harrow's breaths grew labored and finally ceased. The voice's prophecy had come true, but not in the way Martin had feared. The calls continued, each whisper more ominous than the last, predicting events that grew increasingly sinister. Martin's skepticism transformed into dread, and then into an obsession. He began documenting each call, each prediction, searching for a pattern, a reason. The mansion felt different now. The shadows seemed deeper, the silence heavier. In a desperate attempt to uncover the truth, Martin traced the calls. They led him to an old, disused part of the mansion, a section sealed off for decades. Behind a forgotten door, covered in dust and cobwebs, lay an ancient telephone, its cord severed, its surface dull with age. The revelation was as impossible as it was terrifying. The calls had been coming from within the house all along. As Martin stood there, grappling with the impossible, the phone rang, its shrill tone slicing through the silence of the forgotten room. With trembling hands, Martin lifted the receiver. The voice that whispered this time was different. It was his own, but laden with an emotion he couldn't place. "You cannot escape your fate, Martin," his own voice hissed. The story spirals into a harrowing journey of self-discovery as Martin confronts the possibility that the voice may be a manifestation of his subconscious, a product of a mind frayed by loneliness and the weight of family secrets. He delves into the Colby family history, uncovering tales of madness, tragedy, and a curse that whispers through generations. Whispers in the Telephone Tube is a tale that weaves psychological horror with the supernatural, exploring themes of fate, the power of the subconscious, and the thin line between reality and madness. Martin's struggle becomes not just a fight against the mysterious voice, but a confrontation with the darkest corners of his own mind. Story 4. The Forest Missing. In the dense, shadowy heart of the Broken Shade Forest, a group of teenagers, vibrant and buoyant with the naive bravado of youth, embarked on what was meant to be an exhilarating camping trip. Ethan, the de facto leader, was a charming yet reckless soul. Lily, his steadfast girlfriend, possessed an infectious zest for adventure. Mark, the quiet thinker, always seemed lost in thought. And Sarah, the newest addition to their circle, carried an air of mystery around her. Their laughter and chatter echoed through the trees, oblivious to the foreboding silence that seemed to swallow their sounds. As dusk crept in, the once familiar trails twisted into unfamiliar, menacing pathways. The trees, like gnarled sentinels, seemed to close in around them. A creeping fog slithered between the trunks, distorting their vision. Panic set in when they realized they were lost, the comforting sights and sounds of civilization a world away. In the chilling embrace of the forest, they stumbled upon an old, decrepit cabin, half-eaten by time and nature. Its windows were like blind eyes, its door a gaping maw. Inside they found relics of a bygone era and a tattered journal, its pages yellowed with age. The journal spoke of a local legend, the tale of the whispering wraith of Broken Shade, a spectral entity said to be the tormented spirit of a long-forgotten woodsman, bound to the forest for an unspeakable crime. As night descended like a black curtain, a sense of dread permeated the air. The forest, alive with nocturnal whispers and rustles, seemed to watch them with unseen eyes. Ethan, driven by a mix of fear and curiosity, insisted they explore the forest to find a way out. The others reluctantly agreed, their sense of unease growing with every step. Deeper into the woods, they encountered phenomena that defied logic. Trees that bled when cut, whispers that echoed their deepest fears, and shadows that moved with malevolent intent. The air was thick with a sense of being watched, and the cold touch of the unseen brushed against their skin. Sarah, who had been unusually quiet, began to mutter under her breath, her eyes distant and unfocused, as if listening to a voice only she could hear. As they ventured further, the forest seemed to warp around them. Time and space lost meaning. They stumbled upon scenes of horror, remnants of past victims, possessions left in mid-flight, and ethereal figures that flickered at the edge of their vision. The whispering wraith, a formless shadow, began to manifest, its presence suffocating, filled with malice and sorrow. The teenagers, now gripped by terror and despair, realized the legend was more than a tale. It was a warning. Mark, the thinker, hypothesized that the wraith was anchored to the forest by its unresolved past. They needed to uncover the truth behind the legend to break the curse. Frantically searching the cabin again, they uncovered hidden letters that revealed the woodsman's tale, a story of love, betrayal, and a fateful decision that led to an eternal punishment. Armed with this knowledge, they confronted the wraith at the heart of the forest. In a moment of clarity, Sarah, who seemed attuned to the spectral entity, spoke words of forgiveness and release, her voice cutting through the oppressive atmosphere. The wraith, its form becoming more human with each word, seemed to listen, its malevolence waning. As the first light of dawn pierced the darkness, the wraith let out a final sorrowful wail before dissipating into the morning mist, its presence fading from the forest. The teenagers, forever changed, found their way back, the forest now just a maze of trees and trails. Their experience in Broken Shade Forest became a whispered tale among their peers, a chilling reminder of the fine line between legend and reality. In the heart of the forest, where shadows play and the unknown lurks, the memory of the whispering wraith lingered, a testament to the power of unresolved pasts and the mysteries hidden in the depths of the dark, silent woods.